Suffering doesn't come from what happens to you. It comes from your resistance to it. If you want to break free from the endless cycle of emotional pain, the first thing you need to understand is a brutal and often overlooked truth. Suffering is not caused by events themselves, but by your resistance to what is. Most people go through their entire lives without ever realizing this. They remain trapped in a perpetual state of inner turmoil, constantly reliving the same pain over and over again, completely unaware that they are the ones keeping the suffering alive. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, summed this up perfectly in one of his most powerful quotes. "What you resist persists." And this isn't just a nice-sounding phrase. It's a profound psychological and spiritual truth that has the power to transform your entire life. Think about this deeply. Whenever something painful happens in your life, maybe you lose a job, a relationship ends, someone betrays you, or you face a major setback, your emotional reaction is natural. You might feel sadness, anger, disappointment, fear, confusion. All of these are valid, human emotions. But here's the twist. The suffering you experience doesn't come from the event itself. It comes from your internal battle with reality. It comes from the voice in your mind that says, "This shouldn't be happening. This is unfair. I can't live with this." That inner resistance, the refusal to accept what is what transforms pain into prolonged torture. That's the true source of suffering. You see, the human mind is wired to seek control. We want life to go our way. We want to avoid discomfort at all costs. We want predictability, stability, and certainty. But life doesn't work according to our personal preferences. It doesn't obey our rules. It operates under its own mysterious rhythm. So what happens when life throws us a curveball? When things don't go as planned? Our instinct is to resist, to fight, to deny. We say, "This shouldn't have happened to me." And right there, in that moment of mental rebellion against reality, suffering begins. Let's take a breakup, for example. The natural pain of losing someone might last for days, weeks, maybe even a few months. But the suffering that lingers for years, that deep, agonizing ache that comes from refusal, from clinging to the past, from replaying the memories on an endless loop, from believing that it should have turned out differently. It's not the loss that's destroying you. It's your refusal to let go of what already is. The same goes for betrayal, failure, rejection, or any kind of loss. It's not the event that breaks you. It's the constant mental resistance to accepting what's already done. So, how do we break this destructive cycle? The answer lies in a spiritual principle that, when fully embraced, has the power to change everything. Radical acceptance. Now let's be clear. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It doesn't mean that you like what happened. It doesn't mean that you approve of it or that it didn't hurt. Acceptance simply means that you stop fighting with reality. You stop pouring your energy into an unwinnable war. You stop resisting what already is. Instead, you take that same energy and redirect it toward the only thing you truly have power over, your response. And when you finally accept what has happened, truly accept it, something incredible begins to unfold. The heaviness starts to lift, not because the pain magically vanishes, but because you've stopped feeding it. You're no longer fueling the suffering with your resistance. Imagine someone who's just been fired. If they hold on to anger, blame, and the belief that it was unjust, they can remain stuck in that pain for years, resenting the company, feeling like a victim, and carrying that wound into every future job. But if instead They choose to accept what happened and ask, "What can I do with this?" They reclaim their power. They stop living in reaction and start living in intention. The pain becomes a catalyst for growth. That's the key. It all comes down to your perception. Jung often spoke about the importance of integrating all aspects of our experience, even the painful and uncomfortable ones, because pain, when accepted rather than resisted, transforms into wisdom. A major mistake we all make at some point is believing that our suffering is unique, that no one else could possibly understand what we're going through, that our pain is somehow more unbearable than what others have faced. But the truth is, pain is a universal part of the human experience. Everyone suffers. What separates those who evolve from those who remain stuck is not the amount of pain they experience, it's their relationship to it. Those who resist pain suffer. Those who accept pain grow. If you truly want to heal, if you truly want to be free, the first step is to stop waging war against life. Accept what happened. Accept what you can't change. Accept what already is. And then focus all your energy on what you can change. And here's what no one tells you about liberation from suffering. The most shocking realization is that most of your suffering never came from the event itself. It came from how tightly you held on to the pain. A relationship ended, and you were heartbroken for years. But it wasn't just the breakup. It was your refusal to let go. Someone betrayed you, and you couldn't move on. But it wasn't just the betrayal. It was your attachment to resentment. You lost an opportunity, and you felt stuck in life. But it wasn't just the missed chance. It was your obsession with what could have been. When you finally let go of resistance, when you stop fighting reality, suffering begins to crumble. This doesn't mean the pain disappears overnight, but it loses its grip on you. And over time, the pain turns into a lesson, not a lifelong burden. Now comes the deeper part, the one most people never even consider. How your unconscious mind keeps you trapped in suffering. Because once you understand that suffering is born from resistance, the next question is, if I know this, why do I keep repeating the same emotional patterns over and over again? And this is where everything changes. Because once you uncover the hidden answer to that question, you'll realize something powerful. You have far more control over your life than you ever imagined. So keep watching, because in the next section, we'll uncover something truly powerful. How your mind has been unconsciously conditioned to hold on to suffering. And more importantly, what you can start doing today to break free from that pattern once and for all. Let's begin with a hard truth. Your unconscious mind is programmed to make you suffer, over and over again. If you've ever felt like pain just keeps showing up in your life out of nowhere, like suffering is some kind of bad luck that follows you around, then it's time to wake up to a truth that very few people dare to tell you. The reality is, you are the one repeating your pain again and again, without even realizing it. And not because you want to suffer, but because your unconscious programming is pulling you back into the same emotional loops again and again. The renowned psychologist Carl Jung put it this way in one of his most powerful and confronting statements: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What Jung meant is that the pain you keep experiencing is not random. It's not that the universe is punishing you or that life is just cruel for no reason. It's not that you're doomed or unlucky or cursed. It's because inside of you, deep in your subconscious, there are emotional and mental patterns that you keep reenacting automatically. You're reliving them. Not because you want to, but because they're familiar. They're wired into your internal system. The unconscious mind is like a hidden software installed when you were still a child. And if you grew up in an environment where love came with pain, where abandonment was normal, or where safety was never guaranteed, then those beliefs became your emotional blueprint. They weren't chosen consciously. They were absorbed, imprinted, and now they're running the show. No one tells you this. Your unconscious doesn't care about your happiness. It only cares about what's familiar. That's why, even when your conscious mind wants to escape suffering, a deeper part of you keeps attracting the same people, the same situations, the same emotional outcomes. It's not a coincidence. It's a pattern. It's the invisible trap of the unconscious. Have you noticed how you always seem to end up in relationships that hurt you? Have you ever experienced moments of joy or success, only to somehow ruin them or lose them unexpectedly? Do you feel like you keep running into the same kind of problems, even when you promise yourself that this time it'll be different? That's not bad luck. That's your subconscious mind repeating what it knows. That's emotional self-sabotage at work. But why would anyone choose what destroys them? The answer lies in what you learned as a child. If you learned that love was always followed by pain or abandonment, then as an adult, you'll unconsciously seek out relationships that recreate that exact emotional experience. Not because you want to suffer, but because that version of love is what your nervous system understands. It feels familiar. And in the mind's twisted logic, familiar equals safe, even if it hurts. If you experienced rejection, humiliation, or neglect when you were young, then today you might avoid opportunities, relationships, or dreams, because a part of you is terrified that the same pain will return. You may stay where it's safe, even if that means staying in a cycle of pain. And here's the part that hits the hardest. As long as you don't become aware of these patterns, you will repeat them for the rest of your life. And you'll call it destiny. You'll say things like, "Why do I always end up with the same kind of person? Why does my life never really change? Why does everything always go wrong for me?" But the truth is, it's not life. It's not fate. It's not the universe working against you. It's you, reenacting the script that was written inside of you long ago. So how do you break this unconscious pattern of suffering? Here comes the key. You cannot change what you cannot see. If you truly want to end the cycle of emotional pain, the very first step is to recognize the pattern you've been unconsciously living. You need to bring it into the light. Start by asking yourself a few deeply honest questions. What has been the dominant emotion in my life? Rejection, abandonment, betrayal, frustration, fear? What kind of relationships or situations do I keep attracting? What story am I telling myself about who I am and what the world is? When you answer these questions truthfully, something incredible happens. You begin to realize that the suffering you've been experiencing hasn't been coming from the outside. It's been coming from within you. You've been projecting it onto the world, again and again, without realizing it. And that is the moment when everything starts to change. Breaking the cycle of emotional pain doesn't mean you'll never feel sadness, anger, or frustration again. Those emotions are part of being human. But what it does mean is that you'll no longer be a prisoner of a hidden pattern that controls you without your awareness. Because the moment you become conscious of your unconscious programming, you stop being its slave. You can't avoid all pain in life, but you can stop recycling it. You can stop perpetuating it. You can stop choosing it. without even realizing you are. From that moment on, you begin to choose consciously, instead of reacting on autopilot. And in the next section, we're going even deeper. We'll explore how the ego plays a central role in keeping you trapped in suffering, and more importantly, what you can do to dismantle its power before it keeps sabotaging your life. Because once you understand the role of the ego in all of this, that's when you finally begin to reclaim your power. Let's talk about the ego. The ego feeds off your suffering. It keeps your pain alive. If you're truly committed to breaking free from the emotional patterns that keep hurting you, then there's something vital you need to understand. Your ego is your biggest obstacle on the path to healing. The ego is that inner voice that convinces you that you have every right to feel hurt, that the world is unfair, that others need to change before you can be happy. It tells you stories like, "I'm always the victim," or "Nothing ever works out for me." But here's the brutal truth. The ego doesn't want you to heal, because if you healed, if you truly let go of your suffering, the ego would lose its identity. It would no longer have anything to feed on. The ego thrives on conflict, on blame, on judgment, on the illusion of separation. It creates drama just to keep itself alive. It tells you that your pain is proof that you're right and the world is wrong, that you're justified in your resentment, that you need to hold on to your wounds. But when you start to see the ego for what it is, a defense mechanism, a mask, a survival strategy, you can begin to disarm it. You can begin to step into a deeper version of yourself, one that no longer needs to cling to pain in order to feel real, one that doesn't need to repeat the past in order to feel safe. Because the truth is, healing is not about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Carl Jung once said, "The mind that creates the problem is not the same mind that can solve it." This statement holds a profound truth, one that reveals the very mechanism of our suffering. The part of you that has caused your emotional pain is not capable of healing it, and that part is the ego. The ego is not just a voice in your head. It is the filter through which you perceive everything. And unfortunately, it's that same ego that created your pain in the first place. When you try to heal from within the ego, all you do is reinforce the exact suffering you're trying to escape. But how does the ego sabotage your emotional healing? The ego is cunning. It doesn't blatantly tell you, "I want you to suffer." Instead, it whispers convincing reasons why you should continue to hold on to your pain. It will remind you again and again of everything that was done to you, how you were betrayed, how life was unfair, how people abandoned you. It recycles those memories like a looped film reel, making you believe that thinking about them constantly gives you some kind of power. But in truth, this only keeps you trapped in the same loop of pain, in the same emotional prison that the ego built. One of the most dangerous tricks the ego plays is making you identify with your suffering. It convinces you that your pain is who you are. Without even realizing it, you begin to define yourself through the lens of your past wounds. You start saying things like, "I'm always betrayed," "People always leave me," "This always happens to me." And each time you say it, each time you think it, you carve that identity deeper into your psyche. You unknowingly become loyal to your pain. The ego will also try to convince you that the problem lies outside of you. It tells you that your pain is someone else's fault, that life owes you something, that your circumstances need to change before you can feel okay again. And this is the perfect trap, because if the solution is always external, then you never have to take ownership of your healing. You remain in a state of waiting for an apology, for justice, for someone to save you. And as long as you're waiting, you're not moving, you're not evolving, you're stuck. You see, the ego feeds on conflict, comparison, and old wounds that never quite heal, because the ego itself keeps scratching at them until they bleed again. It thrives when you dwell on what went wrong. It keeps you in a cycle of self-pity, resentment, and blame. It convinces you that you are powerless. This is where the trap of victimhood begins. One of the most subtle and dangerous ways the ego keeps you weak is through the identity of the victim. When you fall into victimhood, you start believing that everything bad that happens to you is because of others, other people, bad luck, cruel fate. And while it might feel like you're protecting yourself by blaming the outside world, what you're actually doing is surrendering your personal power. Because if you believe you have no control over your life, you will never take the steps necessary to change it. And that's exactly what the ego wants, to keep you small, defenseless, and suffering. But here comes the harshest truth of all. No one is coming to save you. No matter how much you cry, no matter how many times you blame others, no matter how loudly you complain, no one is going to rescue you. The only person who can break this cycle is you. So how do you dismantle the ego and regain control over your life? The first and most important step is recognizing that you are not your ego. You are not your suffering. You are not your past. You are not that inner voice telling you you'll always be a victim. The ego wants you to cling to your pain because that's what keeps it alive. But the moment you stop feeding it, the ego starts to lose power. It begins to weaken. And in that moment, something incredible happens. You start to awaken. There are 3 powerful ways to begin breaking the ego's grip on you. 1. Observe the voice in your head. When the ego starts reminding you of your wounds, when it tells you life is unfair, pause. Don't react. Just watch the voice like an observer. Realize that this voice is not you. It's just a mental program, a pattern, a recording that plays over and over. The more you observe it without identifying with it, the less control it has. 2. Stop feeding the story of suffering. Every time you replay the story of how you were wronged, every time you talk about your pain to anyone who will listen, you reinforce that wound. You give it more power. Ask yourself, does this story empower me, or does it weaken me? If it weakens you, let it go. Stop rehearsing your pain. 3. Do the opposite of what the ego wants. The ego wants you to react, to lash out, to hold grudges, to stay angry. But when you respond with calm, with detachment, with acceptance, you disarm the ego. You take back your power. The moment you begin to see the ego for what it truly is, its control starts to crumble. You stop feeling the need to hold on to pain. You stop needing outside validation. You stop identifying as a victim of your circumstances. And in that clarity, you realize something powerful. The suffering never truly came from what happened to you. The pain was real, yes. But the story the ego built around that pain is what kept you trapped. And now, we move to one of the most transformative truths about emotional healing. Pain does not go away by fighting it. It begins to dissolve when you embrace it in a completely different way. This is the part no one teaches us. We're told from a young age to avoid pain at all costs. Don't cry. Be strong. Don't show weakness. So we learn to repress it, to deny it, to run from it. But the truth is, what you resist persists. The more you try to suppress emotional pain, the more power it gains over you. Repressed pain doesn't disappear. It buries itself deep in your mind, in your body, in your behavior. It becomes chronic anxiety. It becomes unexplainable anger. It becomes numbness. And the more you refuse to feel it, the deeper it roots itself in your subconscious. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You cannot heal by ignoring your pain. You must face it, completely, honestly, and without resistance. Think of pain like a force. When you push against it, it pushes back. That's why, when you try to escape emotions like sadness, grief, or rage, they become even stronger. You tell yourself not to cry, not to feel, not to break down. You distract yourself with work, with social media, with anything that keeps you from sitting with yourself. But when you're finally alone, when the noise stops, the pain comes rushing back even harder. You blame others. You blame life. You tell yourself that the pain is their fault. But as long as you keep projecting the pain outward, you will never look inward. And that is where the healing truly begins. It's not the pain that destroys us. It's the resistance to the pain that makes it unbearable. So, what's the key to breaking the cycle? Accept the pain. Stop running. Allow yourself to feel, fully, consciously, without judgment. If you're sad, cry. If you're angry, sit with the anger. Don't act on it impulsively, but don't deny it either. Watch the emotion. Witness it. Feel it move through your body, and something incredible will begin to happen. When you stop resisting pain and start welcoming it as a natural human experience, it starts to lose its grip. The monster in your mind begins to shrink. And here's the most beautiful truth of all. Nothing lasts forever. Every emotion, no matter how intense, is temporary. Every wave of suffering will pass, if you allow it to. But when you resist it, when you keep dragging the story with you, you stretch the suffering far beyond what's necessary. Healing doesn't happen in the future. It happens in the now. In the moment you decide to stop running from yourself and start embracing everything you are, wounds and all. That's when you begin to truly transform. Carl Jung spoke deeply about the importance of inner transformation, and one of the central truths of that journey is the understanding of impermanence. Nothing lasts forever, not joy, not pain. Everything is in constant motion. Just like pleasure, pain is temporary. It does not define you, and it is not eternal. Think back to the last time you went through a difficult moment. At that time, it may have felt like you were trapped in a storm that would never end. You may have felt hopeless, exhausted, as though you'd never escape. But somehow, you did. You're here now, wiser, more experienced, with new perspectives. You made it through. And the same thing will happen with whatever pain you're going through now. This too shall pass. The storm will calm, and the sun will rise again. So how do we begin to radically accept pain instead of being consumed by it? How do we stop being slaves to our own suffering? There are steps you can begin to practice right now. Powerful tools to reclaim your emotional freedom and step into your inner strength. First, stop judging your pain. Don't label it. Don't overanalyze it. Don't ask yourself, "Why am I feeling like this?" or "When will this end?" Instead, simply allow yourself to feel, without resistance, without shame, without stories. It isn't good or bad. It's simply an experience moving through you. That's all it is. Second, Observe it in your body. When you feel anxiety, anger, grief, or sorrow, don't let your mind spin elaborate narratives about how unfair life is or how broken you are. Instead, bring your attention back to your body. Ask yourself, where do I feel this emotion? How does it physically show up inside me? Maybe it's a tight chest, a lump in your throat, trembling hands, or a knot in your stomach. Just notice it. Observe it without trying to fix or fight it. Third, breathe through it. Instead of clenching your jaw, tightening your fists, or distracting yourself, try this. Take a deep breath, and then another. Let the breath move through the emotion. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to make the pain disappear. Your only job is to be present with what is, fully present. And something incredible happens when you do this. When you stop resisting pain and start welcoming it with awareness, you realize it has no power over you. The pain might still be there, but its grip on you begins to fade. You're no longer a victim. You become someone who can move through pain with strength, with maturity, with grace. This is your true power, not in control, not in resistance, but in acceptance. Most people spend their entire lives running from pain, distracting themselves, avoiding the uncomfortable, escaping through addictions, through work, through denial. But the only real way to free yourself from suffering is to face it, directly, consciously, with an open heart. And when you do that, when you stop fighting and allow yourself to truly feel, something miraculous happens. You discover that pain was never your enemy. Suffering didn't come to destroy you. It came to awaken you, to shape you, to transform you. And once you understand this, the fear begins to dissolve. So now, let's go even deeper. Because once you stop resisting pain, you can actually use it. Not only to heal, but to evolve in ways you never imagined. This is where true transformation begins. You can turn your pain into power. This is the alchemical process of healing. By now you understand that resisting pain only makes it stronger, that avoiding it makes the wounds deeper, and that accepting it is the first step toward freedom. But there is something even more extraordinary you can do. You can transform your suffering into your greatest source of strength. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He spoke of the ancient art of alchemy, not as the literal transformation of lead into gold, but as a psychological and spiritual journey. The true alchemy happens within us. The lead is our pain, our deepest wounds, our fears, our traumas. The gold is what we become when we embrace that pain and allow it to refine us. Wisdom, strength, maturity, compassion. These are the gifts on the other side of suffering. So the real question isn't, how can I avoid suffering? The real question is, how can I use my suffering to become a stronger, wiser, freer version of myself? This is the hidden power of pain. It's a call to awaken. Think about the strongest people you've ever known. The ones with depth, with insight, with a quiet courage that radiates from their presence. They didn't get there because they had easy lives. They didn't become who they are by avoiding hardship. No, they walked through fire. They were broken open. And on the other side, they were reborn. Every experience of pain is a crossroads, a sacred invitation. You can let it close you down, or you can let it open you up. You can let it define you, or you can let it refine you. It's the choice to stop being who you were and to become someone entirely new, more awake, more resilient, more deeply connected to life. Carl Jung once spoke about something called the dark night of the soul, a phase where an individual comes face to face with their deepest suffering. It's a period of intense emotional and spiritual turmoil, where it feels like the foundation of your world is collapsing. You feel like you've reached your limit, like the weight of life is simply too much to bear. The pain becomes overwhelming, suffocating even. But Jung didn't describe this moment as a punishment. He saw it as a sacred opportunity, an invitation to transformation, a test not of your strength, but of your willingness to evolve. Because it is precisely when everything seems lost, when you think you can't go on, that you are standing on the edge of your greatest breakthrough. Now imagine that instead of resisting this darkness, you paused and asked yourself, what is this trying to teach me? How can I use this pain not to collapse, but to rise? In that moment, something powerful happens. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start becoming the alchemist of your own life. You begin to transform destruction into rebirth. From ashes, a new version of you is forged, stronger, wiser, more aligned with your true self. Each time you've gone through loss, betrayal, heartbreak, or deep disappointment, something within you has died. But what most people don't realize is that this death is necessary. It's the death of illusions, the end of false expectations, the dismantling of identities that no longer serve your growth. And what follows every death is a chance for rebirth, a sacred opportunity to rebuild yourself from a deeper place of truth. If you take a moment to reflect on your life, you'll likely notice that the experiences that shaped you the most were not the happiest ones. It was the struggles, the hardships, the times you were pushed to your edge and somehow found the strength to move forward. That is the essence of transformation. Pain, in its purest form, breaks you apart. It shatters the beliefs you held about yourself, the world, and others. It forces you to look in the mirror and confront all that you've ignored. Your shadows, your wounds, the parts of you that you've been too afraid to acknowledge. And within that confrontation lies a gift, the chance to choose, to either remain stuck or to evolve, to let pain define you or refine you. So how do you turn your suffering into power? How do you alchemize pain into purpose? Here's a practical framework to begin this transformation. First, shift your mindset. Pain is not a punishment. It's an initiation. Life doesn't give you suffering to break you. It gives you challenges to awaken you. Those who see pain as unfair often remain trapped in bitterness. But those who embrace it as part of the journey emerge stronger than ever. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to grow, to learn, to evolve. So stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this here to teach me? Second, transform your story into your power. Look at those who have been through immense suffering, yet have managed to turn their pain into a force for good. People who were rejected and learned to validate themselves. People who were betrayed and discovered the strength of trusting their intuition. People who hit rock bottom and uncovered a power they never knew existed. Your story is uniquely yours, but how you use it is entirely up to you. Third, let pain fuel your purpose. Pain can either destroy you or drive you. It's your decision. If someone hurt you, don't dwell in resentment. Use it as a fire to rise. If life feels unfair, show the world how you can overcome. If you've experienced loss, fill the emptiness with meaning. The most successful people in the world didn't get there because they avoided pain. They got there because they used their pain as a launching pad to greatness. And then comes the final stage, turning pain into wisdom. When you've walked through suffering and truly learned from it, something remarkable happens. You become unshakable. You stop reacting to the negativity of others because you understand that their projections are not yours to carry. You no longer fear pain because you faced it and survived. In fact, you've emerged stronger, wiser, more grounded in your truth. You become a person with an undeniable presence, someone who radiates quiet strength because you've been through darkness and found your own light. This is what Jung referred to as individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you truly are, without masks, without fear, without needing anything external to validate your worth. And when you reach this point, the emotional cycle of pain begins to dissolve. You no longer define yourself by what hurt you. You don't avoid pain. You welcome it as a teacher, a guide, a signal that you are ready for your next evolution. And then it hits you. Pain didn't make you weaker. It made you invincible. The choice is now in your hands. You know the truth. Pain isn't something you should run from. It's the spark that can ignite your most profound transformation. You have two options: remain stuck in suffering, resisting, feeling like a victim of life's cruelty, or use that same suffering as a springboard to become someone stronger, wiser, more unstoppable than ever before. Only one of those paths will set you free. So which path will you choose? If you choose to break the cycle and turn every difficult experience into a stepping stone for growth, write it in the comments. I transform my pain into power. Because once you make that decision, once you truly commit to owning your journey, nothing and no one can stop you. In the end, it all comes down to this. Will you let pain control you, poison your thoughts, drain your spirit, or will you do what few dare to do, use it as a catalyst for your transformation? Jung said it best. You cannot awaken unless you first hit rock bottom. Now that you understand the truth behind suffering, the power to change your life is in your hands. Pain only has power over you if you keep resisting it. But once you stop running and begin embracing it as your greatest teacher, everything shifts. You become the master of your destiny, not its victim. So if you've made it this far, it's because you're ready. Ready to change your life. Ready to stop being defined by your suffering and start writing a new story. But this is just the beginning. Watch the next video. It will leave you speechless and help you dive even deeper into your path of transformation. Click now, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the content that could truly change your life. I'll see you in the next video. Do you know what hurts more than words? Silence. Especially the kind of silence that comes from someone who no longer begs, who no longer pleads, who no longer feels the need to explain themselves. It's not the absence of sound that wounds. It's the absence of effort, the absence of presence, the absence of acknowledgement. That silence, heavy and deliberate, is born not from indifference, but from exhaustion. It carries the weight of 1,000 unspoken things, of words that were once screamed into voids, of emotions that were once spilled only to be dismissed, of patience that was stretched until it snapped. It's at that exact moment, when you decide to keep quiet, walk away, and stop justifying yourself, that you leave a deep mark on someone who never knew how to value you. Because silence hurts in a different way. It doesn't scream, it doesn't blame, it doesn't beg, but it still says it all. And believe me, those who thought you were weak or replaceable start to hear it when it's too late. Your silence is the sum of everything you swallowed, everything you endured, everything you forgave for a love that was never reciprocated. It is the voice of your dignity, tired of explaining itself. And yes, that absence feels like a real emptiness, because silence leaves people alone with their conscience. No excuses, no screams to cover up the blame, no drama to hide behind. Only the weight of their own mistake. Do you know why silence is so powerful? Because it shows your decision to stop fighting, to stop begging for crumbs, to stop defending the indefensible. It's your way of saying, I'm no longer available to be anyone's bedside, the occasional refuge, the backup plan. And that hurts. Because suddenly, they face the truth. They lost you, not because you stopped loving, but because they never knew how to give you what you deserved. As Carl Jung said, those who don't face their shadow project their emotional garbage onto others, and without realizing it, you became the container for what they couldn't handle, their guilt, their lack, their frustration, until one day you simply wake up and choose silence. And no, it's not weakness, nor indifference, it's the purest form of your healing. Because those who have healed no longer argue, plead, cry, or beg. They just leave. And that's when your silence begins to resonate in their soul. They wonder, why don't you respond anymore? Why are you no longer here? And that emptiness weighs more than any argument. Because silence cannot be twisted, cannot be manipulated, cannot be denied. Silence becomes a brutal mirror that forces others to confront their own flaws. The person who failed to value you will remember every word you said, but above all, they will remember the moment you stopped saying them. Because when someone gets used to you always being there, to you responding, to you sustaining their chaos, it hurts them deeply to discover you are no longer available. There is no harsher punishment for an immature ego than having no one to blame, no one to vent their frustration on. Your silence breaks their comfort zone. And here's the important thing. Your silence is your strongest cry for dignity. Not everything needs to be explained. Not everything is healed with words. Some wounds only heal when you walk away. Some people only begin to value your presence when they face your absence. And no, it's not revenge. It's a consequence. That of not being heard, not being seen, not being respected when you gave your all. As Hong said, what is not consciously realized is experienced as destiny. And sooner or later, that person will face the destiny created by their own lack. I know that silence hurts. That many times you wanted to scream everything you felt, all the anger you held in, all the times you were broken. But when you choose silence from a place of self-love, not fear, something powerful happens. You regain your peace, your center, your strength. Silence, when well chosen, is medicine. It's the exact distance needed to heal without allowing unclean hands to touch your wound again. And while you heal in silence, they face their own hell. Because there are no more screams, no excuses, no mind games. Only their conscience remains, and no one escapes it. So, if you ever doubt whether you did the right thing by remaining silent, remember, it's not your job to teach those who don't want to learn, nor to heal those who refuse to see their pain, nor to save those who don't want to be saved. Your only duty is to yourself, to protect yourself, prioritize yourself, and take care of yourself. And sometimes, that's only achieved by silently walking away, letting the other person face the consequences of their selfishness. They may try to provoke you, send you excuses, accuse you of being cold. Don't fall for it. Your silence says you're done accepting less than you deserve. Because if you give in, they'll play with your mind again, repeat their patterns, and diminish your dignity once again. Remember, someone who truly loves you will never push you into silence. Someone who truly cares for you won't push your patience to the limit until it breaks. And someone who truly values you will never make you feel like walking away is the only option. So if today you're withdrawing, keeping silent, distancing yourself, don't feel guilty. You're doing the right thing. You're giving that person the only real chance to understand what it means to lose you. Not everyone knows how to lose. Some grew up believing you'd always be there. That's why your silence hurts so much, because for the first time, they understand that you weren't unconditional, that you weren't going to tolerate everything forever. They see that you know how to leave, close the door, choose you. And believe me, that kind of silence leaves a much deeper mark than any words spoken in anger. Someone once said that the unconscious only awakens after a hard blow, one that breaks autopilot and forces us to look inward. Your silence is that blow. It's the jolt that confronts the other with their shadow. And although it hurts to see it, perhaps it's the best thing that could have happened. No one truly changes as long as someone continues to hold on to their hopes. So today, I want to invite you to feel proud of your silence. It's not coldness, it's not weakness, it's strength. It's the courage to let go of what no longer does you any good. It's wisdom, knowing that not everything deserves your voice, your energy, or your presence. There are people who only learn when they lose the privilege of having you around. And this is just the beginning. In the next part, we'll go deeper. How to sustain your silence without guilt, how not to give in to provocation, and how to turn it into your most powerful tool of self-love. This isn't punishment, it's healing. It's closing cycles with dignity. It's choosing yourself, even if it leaves a void in those who didn't know how to take care of you. Don't miss what's coming next. We're going to touch places in you that you didn't even know were there. This is just the beginning. And before we continue, tell me, where are you watching us from? I'd love to see how far this beautiful community of self-love and dignity can go. So now, let's go deeper. Silence holds a power we often overlook. It's not just the absence of words. It's a boundary. It's a space. It's an act of self-preservation. When you choose silence with someone who failed to appreciate you, you're delivering the clearest, most powerful message you possibly can. I'm no longer available for the same old patterns. That silence becomes a wall that shields your mental peace. It says, enough without aggression. It marks an ending without drama. People aren't used to losing your voice. They're so sure you'll always reply, always explain, always justify. So when you decide not to say a word, it disrupts their entire power game. They feel unarmed, exposed, even desperate because silence offers no material for argument, no fuel to keep their lies spinning, no hooks to manipulate your empathy. Silence can't be twisted. There's no argument against emptiness. The one who failed to value you begins to feel the intensity of your absence in a way they never expected. They start to remember everything you gave, everything you held up, everything you offered, and it hurts, even if they'll never admit it. Ego will always pretend it doesn't care, but the conscience, it screams, especially when nothing is left to distract it. That's why your silence cuts so deep. It forces them to finally hear themselves. At first, it might feel strange for you too. You've been so used to talking, explaining, trying to fix things, that keeping quiet feels like going against your nature. But I want you to remember this. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Not everyone is worthy of your voice. You've given so much, repeated yourself so many times, and if they still don't value you after all of that, there's nothing left to say. The one who didn't hear you when you were screaming won't hear you now. Your silence, when held with intention, is more powerful than any speech. It's proof that you no longer need to convince anyone of your worth. That's self-love in its purest form. Carl Jung once said, "When you stop projecting, you start healing, and silence interrupts the projection. It brings you back to yourself. It shows you where your energy was going, and it invites you to pull it back in. That's where your true freedom begins. You'll notice that the moment you go quiet, the other person will do everything possible to provoke you. They'll reach out, send messages, try to press your buttons, try to make you feel guilty because they can't stand the emptiness. Your silence is screaming inside them now. They've lost control. That's the exact moment where you must stand your ground. Don't respond from pain. Don't respond from longing. Every word you give them now opens a door for them to hurt you again. I promise you, if you can resist that first impulse to break the silence, you'll feel a kind of peace you may not have known in years. The peace of someone who no longer self-betrays, who no longer begs, who no longer submits. Silence becomes your refuge, your sacred space, where no one else can touch you. And that's not pride, nor revenge, it's self-care. It's healing from a distance. I know it might hurt to think they'll forget you, that silence could mean losing them forever, but I want you to face the truth. Someone who truly loved you would never have forced you into silence. Someone who genuinely respected you wouldn't have pushed you to your limit. So if they walk away for good, it's because they never had the ability to truly value your essence. And that's not a loss, it's a relief. Because you weren't born to be anyone's solution. You were born to share your life with someone who sees your worth with no conditions. As you remain silent, you'll start discovering parts of yourself you hadn't noticed before. You'll realize how many times you gave in out of fear, how many times you spoke just to keep the peace, how many times you tried to hold together what was already falling apart. That kind of realization is pure gold. It gives you your power back. It reminds you that you don't have to sacrifice your inner voice to maintain a relationship that never brought you peace. And as strange as it may sound, your silence will bring deep changes to the person who never knew how to value you. At first, there will be anger. There will be excuses. There will be denial. But with time, when they no longer have a reason to blame you, they'll start confronting their own mistakes. Maybe they won't change. Maybe they won't apologize. But the seed of awareness will have already been planted. And that is enough to close the chapter with dignity. Jung said, "Awareness hurts, and your silence is the shortest path for someone to meet their awareness without distractions, without your explanations, without justifications, only the plain truth of their own emptiness." That process, even if it doesn't look like it, is healing. Because no one changes from comfort, they only change when the pain becomes unbearable. I want you to find the strength to hold on to your silence, even if it hurts, even if they blame you, even if they say you're being cold. Deep down, you know you're not being cruel. You're healing. You're setting boundaries. Without saying a word, you're showing that those who don't take care of you lose you. And that is a lesson that will live in their memory forever. Meanwhile, I want you to make yourself a promise. Don't use your silence as a weapon. Use it as a medicine, not to punish, but to protect yourself, to close old wounds, to rebuild your self-love, to hear yourself again without interference. Because only in that way will you be able to connect again from a place that's healthy, clean, free of resentment or emotional chains. In the next part, we'll go deeper into something essential. How do you rebuild your self-esteem while remaining silent? How do you avoid falling into the trap of returning to a place where you already know there's no love left? And how do you turn this silence into a true new beginning, not just a pause? Because you deserve to move forward with your head held high, knowing you didn't stay where you weren't respected. Don't go yet, because what comes next will be even more liberating and profound. We're going to name emotions you may have never dared to face. This is just beginning, and together we're going to come out stronger. But before we continue, I want to recommend something that might deeply transform the way you're living through this process. Being silent doesn't mean you're empty. Quite the opposite. Your silence is full of meaning, full of everything left unsaid, full of everything you refuse to repeat. And when you learn to stay peaceful within that silence, you become invulnerable. Because nothing hits harder than seeing that the person who once begged is no longer pleading, no longer asking, no longer chasing. That serenity dismantles any form of manipulation. It breaks it into 1,000 pieces. Because while you're in peace, the other person twists in their own chaos. Sooner or later, someone who didn't value you will feel the full impact of that calm, steady, unwavering silence. A silence that no longer waits, that doesn't pursue, that doesn't search. It's the silence of someone who chose themselves. And that is the biggest blow to the ego of someone who got used to your constant availability. You'll notice that many will try to provoke you, just to break your calm. They'll try to pull you off balance, hoping you'll snap, scream, react, because that gives them the comfort of knowing they still have power over you, that they still own your emotions. But when your silence is born from serenity, from the certainty that there's nothing more to give, there's no scream loud enough to shake you. And that's admirable. That's real strength. Please remember this. Serenity is not surrender. It's not giving up. It is the highest expression of acceptance. It means knowing you did all you could, that you loved as deeply as you knew how, that you gave your best, and that it is no longer your responsibility to save someone who refused to save themselves alongside you. It's hard, I know. It's hard to look at the emptiness left behind when you step away. It's hard to fall asleep in the quiet when you used to lie awake trying to fix everything. But in that space, in that silence, in that stillness, the chance to rebuild yourself is born. A chance to reconnect, to return to who you truly are. Because when there are no more screams, no more excuses, no more hollow words, the deepest truth finally appears. You deserve peace. And let me tell you this, when you nurture that peace inside you, nothing and no one can ever steal it again. The one who failed to value you will feel a terrible emptiness, and you'll feel immense relief. Not because you've become cold or indifferent, but because you finally stopped sacrificing yourself. You finally understood that someone who doesn't appreciate your presence doesn't deserve your words. As you maintain this silence, I want you to focus on strengthening your self-worth. Think about everything you bring, everything you gave, every small act of love that went unreciprocated, not to feel like a victim, but to remind yourself that your love was real, your intentions were pure, and your effort was honest. That holds immense value. And if someone didn't know how to receive that, they simply weren't on your level. Stay silent, yes, but also rebuild. Take care of yourself. Heal the wounds that hurt so deeply. Look after your body, your mind, your spirit. Find things that reconnect you with yourself. Learn to be alone without feeling lonely. Read, meditate, walk, breathe. Make your silence a sacred place, not a dark hole. That's why I keep recommending the art of serenity. It's such a powerful tool for filling silence with light, with calm, with purpose. I'll leave the link below for you to check it out. Don't let the moment pass. You'll start noticing how your energy shifts bit by bit. You'll begin to release your need for others' approval. You'll start to value your own silence as the best protection for your peace. And when you reach that place, when you stand firm in serenity, no one can shake you. No one can toy with your emotions again. Because there are no longer open doors for manipulation. It's very likely that memories, ghosts, or nostalgia will show up in your silence. That's normal. Whenever we distance ourselves from someone who once meant a lot, the brain sabotages us with memories of good times. But don't forget why you got here. Don't forget the tears, the neglect, the disrespect. Don't romanticize someone who hurt you. Your silence is the border between your broken past and your peaceful future. Don't cross back. There will be days when you feel like sending a message, explaining once more, asking for closure. And I want you to remember, that person won't give you real closure. The real closure is yours when you decide not to return, when you put yourself first, when you choose peace over chaos. That's where the story truly ends. That's when real healing begins. Carl Jung once said, "What we do not resolve within ourselves, we repeat outside of ourselves." If you don't heal your fear of being alone, you'll run back to someone who didn't value you. That's why your silence must come with commitment, to work on yourself, to face your wounds, to forgive yourself for enduring so much, and to understand that you deserve better. That's how you break the cycle. Today, I want to invite you to use this silence as the gateway into a new chapter. A chapter where you no longer settle for half-hearted love, where you don't tolerate disrespect, where you no longer beg for attention. A chapter where you own your peace, guard your serenity, and protect your heart. The one who failed to value you will feel your absence, will hear the echo of your quiet voice. They'll wonder 1,000 times what they did wrong. And that's the best lesson. Not to hurt them, but maybe, just maybe, so they wake up one day. And if they don't, that's not your burden. You've already played your part. You gave your best. You tried everything. Now it's time to think of you. Hold your silence. Talk to yourself. Listen to your thoughts. Embrace your emotions. And when nostalgia makes your soul tremble, remind yourself of this. Anyone who truly values you would never silence your voice. Anyone who truly loves you would never make you feel so small that silence becomes your only shield. What follows this process is beautiful, even if you can't see it yet. What's coming is your rebuilding, your healing, your transformation into a new version of yourself, stronger, freer, more aware, a version that will never again give away its voice to someone who doesn't deserve it. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into how to use this quiet phase to grow, to be reborn, to rise more powerful than ever. Don't miss what's coming next, because it will be your guide to turning pain into unstoppable strength. Thank you for being here, and remember, the art of serenity can walk beside you. Don't stop investing in yourself. Let's keep going. There's a moment when silence becomes your only shelter. A place where there's no more noise, no more yelling, no more excuses. It's just you and your own conscience. And that can be terrifying, because silence forces you to look at yourself without masks, to face your wounds, to see the shadows you've tried to hide. But that moment is sacred, because that's when the real rebuilding begins, when you no longer feel the need to explain to anyone why you left, when you're done convincing people you deserve to be loved, when you no longer beg to be understood. You reclaim a profound power, the power of being with yourself, the power of being enough for you without needing anyone's approval. That is the real treasure that rises from silence, when you learn to hold it gently. Those who fail to value you will feel that silence like a chasm. They'll face themselves in the mirror and confront everything you used to soothe with your presence. Because your company was their relief, your voice, their comfort, your patience, their remedy. And when all of that disappears, they're left with the full weight of their own emptiness. And even if they never admit it, that's unbearable for many. There's nothing more uncomfortable for someone who refuses to take responsibility than having to live with the consequences of their actions without distractions. Your silence forces them to face the loneliness they created, to realize they lost someone who truly loved them. And no matter how they try to cover it up, no matter how they accuse you of being heartless, no matter how they twist the blame, deep down, they know. They know they won't get you back this time. That's when your silence becomes a lesson. Not a punishment, but a result. A result of not listening, not caring, not cherishing. And those consequences hit the hardest, because they don't come from anger or revenge. They come from self-respect, from dignity, from your right to peace. And no one can argue with that, because it doesn't shout, it doesn't plead, it simply stands there, solid, unwavering, like a wall you no longer wish to break. Over time, that silence begins to change colors inside you. At first it's gray, heavy with pain, full of memories and nostalgia. But as days go by, it becomes brighter, cleaner, healing. You start to feel relief. You regain your energy, and you begin to hear your inner voice again, the one that was buried under endless arguments, justifications, and desperate efforts to save what could not be saved. That's the gift of your silence. It gives you back your ability to hear yourself, to feel yourself, to choose yourself. Because in the absence of unnecessary words, the true connection with your being begins to bloom. And there, slowly but firmly, you begin to rebuild. You start remembering who you were before giving so much. You start recognizing your worth without needing anyone else to confirm it. Meanwhile, the other person is left with the echo of your absence. They'll remember your gestures, your little details, your words, all the things they once ignored, dismissed, or took for granted. And each of those memories will pierce like a blade, because they'll know you won't be repeating them. That certainty will be devastating for someone who believed you'd always be available. But this is not about celebrating their pain. It's not about wishing them suffering. It's about accepting that sometimes only through loss can someone truly understand who you were and all that you gave. Because while you were there, their mind couldn't see. Only in your absence does their heart awaken. And as harsh as it may sound, sometimes that's how life works. Silence, when it rises from self-love, teaches far more than any angry word, because you can't manipulate it, you can't argue with it, and you can't ignore it. It stays there, still quiet, present, day after day, like a reminder that this time there's no turning back. And even if they try to reach you, even if they want to reconnect, even if they attempt to reopen conversations, you are no longer the same, because silence has changed you. You are no longer the one who begged for answers, who forgave too quickly, who endured indifference. Now you are someone who honors themselves, who protects their peace, who stands firm in self-respect. That kind of change is irreversible. You might still feel some nostalgia, and for some, remembering might still hurt. But you wouldn't go back. You wouldn't return to the place where you had to betray your dignity, because now you've learned the most valuable lesson of all. Your peace is not up for negotiation. Carl Jung once said that a human being only truly meets themselves when they're able to be alone, in silence, without masks, without distorted mirrors, without the noise of other voices. That's when the truth finally surfaces. That's where you discover what you actually need, what you truly deserve, and most importantly, what you'll never again be willing to tolerate. When you learn how to hold that space, everything in your life begins to shift. You start to attract different people, healthier situations, more honest and meaningful relationships, because your energy begins to vibrate higher. And suddenly, you no longer fit into the same pain you once called home. And that right there is magic. Even if it feels terrifying at first, your silence becomes a filter. It pushes away those who aren't ready to grow and invites in those who are capable of loving you with respect, with consciousness, with true reciprocity. That's why you shouldn't fear it. You should welcome it, inhabit it, turn it into your companion, because only through silence does real transformation begin to bloom. Some people will say your silence is cold, that it's pride, that it's cowardice. Don't listen to those voices. They speak from their own wounds, not from truth. Silence born from your dignity doesn't destroy, it heals. It doesn't hurt, it protects. It doesn't punish, it teaches. And whoever truly loves you will eventually understand that if you chose silence, it's only because you had already screamed too much, begged too often, and given everything without ever being truly seen. That's the soul's clearest language. When your silence is rooted in love and not in hate, you'll realize it doesn't feel so heavy. It doesn't drag you down, doesn't hurt anymore. On the contrary, it becomes lighter, almost freeing, because you're no longer carrying words on your lips that were never heard. You're no longer wasting energy trying to convince. You're no longer tearing yourself apart in the name of love. You've become someone who knows when to walk away, someone who understands that love should never hurt, that companionship shouldn't exhaust you, and that attention should never have to be begged for. And right there, in that very understanding, your real healing begins. In the next part, we'll take the final step, how to turn that silence into your new way of life, forever. How to use it as a door to the most authentic form of self-love, and how to rebuild a future without falling back into the same old patterns. This journey doesn't end here. I can promise you that what's coming will be the greatest revelation of all. When everything goes quiet and the echo of your words disappears, the real test begins. That's when your silence becomes not just a temporary strategy, but a new way of being, because you've learned that you can't keep offering your voice to those who refuse to hear it. You can't keep sharing your energy with those who don't know how to hold it. And in that moment, you finally realize you've been reborn. That rebirth is painful because it demands farewells to people, to illusions, to shared dreams, even to the image you built of someone. Letting go hurts. Accepting hurts. Closing the door hurts. But the pain of endings is far more healing than the endless suffering of staying somewhere you were never valued. Slowly, that silence stops being an emergency shelter and becomes your natural home. You learn to live in it without anxiety, without needing validation, without waiting for answers that might never come. That's where true self-love blossoms, because you no longer rely on anything outside of you to feel whole. And as you walk this new path, you begin to notice the signs you once ignored. You begin to see who's truly willing to be in your life without hurting you. You start to recognize who truly values your essence, your presence, your light. You become more selective, more conscious, more intentional, because pain and tears have taught you that not everyone deserves your closeness. And that's a lesson you'll never forget. Those who failed to value you will feel your absence. Maybe they'll reach out. Maybe they'll try to explain everything away. Maybe they'll try to rewrite the past just to avoid guilt. And that's exactly when you must stay firm, because if you reopen that door without any real change, you'll only fall into the same cycle again. And this time, there's no excuse for lying to yourself. You already know how that story ends. Silence, in the end, isn't just what remains after unrequited love. It becomes the beginning of something much deeper, the love you owe yourself. Because respect isn't demanded, it's chosen. And when it chooses to respect you, when it protects your energy, the universe notices. New paths open, new people arrive, and healthier experiences emerge, because you now vibrate from dignity, not from lack. Carl Jung said that everything we don't bring to consciousness returns as destiny. That's why silence has so much power. It breaks the cycle. It forces you to face what you buried, your fears, your wounds, your attachments, and once you see them clearly, you can no longer ignore them. That truth, even if it hurts, is what sets you free. And yes, in that freedom, there is loneliness, but not a kind that hurts, but a kind that heals. Because you are finally not surrounded by the wrong people. You are finally not sharing your life with someone who doesn't know how to sustain it. You are no longer begging for love. In that silence, you rebuild yourself, you rediscover yourself, and you emerge stronger. One day, you will look back and be grateful for that silence. You will be grateful for every tear, every sleepless night, every thought that led you to choose calm over chaos. Because without that break, you would still be tied to something that only drained you. You would still be waiting for something that would never come. The ghosts will return. The memories will knock on your door. And sometimes the longing will make itself felt. But now you have armor, your dignity. Every time you feel the urge to go back, to explain yourself, to give in, you will remember the hurt, the tiredness, the emptiness, and that will be enough to sustain you. They say silence destroys. I believe silence heals. It tears down the false, the forced, the manipulated, and leaves only what is real. And yes, the truth can hurt, but it's better to feel its sting than to live a happiness built on lies. Your silence today screams loudly, I choose me. It says, I won't negotiate my dignity again. It says, I've learned. And even if not everyone understands, even if they judge you or call you cold, it doesn't matter, because only you know what it took to get here. Never forget, those who truly love you will never ask you to be quiet so as not to upset them. Those who truly value you will never push you to set painful boundaries. If you ended up silent, it was because there was no other way, and that is the truth the other person will have to face, even in grief. From now on, let silence be a healthy way of living, not to shut yourself off from the world, but to protect your inner world, not to punish, but to protect you, to make sure you never betray your voice again, to never give it away to someone who refuses to hear it. And if one day you speak again, let it be with someone who knows how to listen, who values your story, who sees beauty in your scars, who is worthy of your love. You were not born to beg for attention, but to share yourself completely with someone capable of holding you in the truth. This silence will remain in the heart of those who didn't know how to value you, like a mark, like an echo, that will remind you that someone loved you unconditionally and that you lost that love due to your own blindness. You, on the other hand, will move forward lighter, stronger, more aware, because now you know that self-love is also said with a goodbye. And when you love again, because you will, it will be from a different place, with less fear, more clarity, and the firm certainty that no one will ever silence you, shut you down, or make you feel like you're not enough again. Thus ends this journey, without shouting or reproaches, only with the peace that comes from choosing silence to care for your heart. Because silence sometimes isn't emptiness, but presence, that of your self-love, your dignity, your courage. This is the beginning of something new. Even if everything seems uncertain today, trust. Soon you will see that this silence was the bridge to your freedom. And that, believe me, is worth 1,000 words. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss any content. See you in the next video. Many people spend their entire lives searching for a purpose, as if it was some hidden destination, a divine revelation that one day suddenly appears and changes everything. They believe that discovering their purpose requires luck, a cosmic accident, or a sacred epiphany. But that moment rarely comes, and while they wait for it, the days pass, one after another, directionless. I am Carl Jung, and I discovered that purpose is not something one finds. It is something one builds. It is not waiting somewhere out there for you. It is within you, waiting to be created. Every choice you make, every action you repeat, every decision, filled with intention, brings you closer or further away from a meaningful life. You don't need to know exactly where you are going to begin moving forward. You only need to decide why it is worth taking the first step. Because purpose is not about outer greatness. It is about inner meaning. And that meaning emerges when you live with direction, with principles, with commitment. Today, you can continue waiting for life to show you the path, or you can begin to walk with intention. And when you do, your purpose will start to reveal itself with every step. For years, I asked myself the same question many people ask in silence. Why am I here? What is the meaning of all this? I woke up, worked, fulfilled what was expected of me, yet inside I felt an emptiness, a silent dissatisfaction that I couldn't explain. It seemed I was doing everything I was supposed to do, yet I didn't feel truly alive. That question, what is the purpose of my life, haunted me like a shadow. No matter how many achievements I reached or how hard I tried to stay on the right path, that inner silence remained, whispering that something essential was missing. I didn't understand why, but I felt I lacked direction, a genuine reason to wake up every morning beyond obligation. That's when I understood something powerful. Human beings cannot survive on achievements, work, or routines alone. We need meaning. Without it, everything becomes a mechanical effort, an existence without soul. Many men fall into this trap. They live for decades without stopping to ask themselves why they do what they do. They chase success, recognition, possessions. But when night falls and they are alone with their thoughts, they feel that something is missing, something they still haven't discovered. It's because we confuse purpose with results. We believe our purpose is a specific goal, a title, an income, a relationship. But true purpose is deeper. It cannot be measured by numbers. It can only be felt by the soul. It's what gives value to an action, even if no one applauds it. It's what sustains us when everything else collapses. It's the reason we remain firm when the world seems to tremble. I once made the mistake of thinking I needed to find my purpose, as if it were a secret hidden somewhere in the world. I searched in books, in teachers, in advice from others, until I realized that no one could give me that answer. Because purpose does not exist outside of us. It's not found in a magical formula or a perfect plan. It exists in how I choose to live, in the principles that guide my days, in what I am willing to give to others and to myself. Purpose is born from commitment. To live a life worth living, not for what you gain, but for what you give. That realization was my beginning. I understood that purpose wasn't something that would happen to me someday if I was lucky. It was something I had to build with every decision. I couldn't keep waiting, because every day lived without purpose is a wasted day, a day that will never return. And time, once gone, takes with it the chance to live meaningfully. That's why the real question isn't, what is my purpose? But rather, am I willing to live with intention, even without all the answers? When that question is answered with courage, everything begins to change. The first thing I had to do was confront my own evasions with brutal honesty. I realized I had filled my life with obligations, with goals imposed by others, with objectives that looked good from the outside, but meant nothing to me inside. It was easy to get lost in the noise of expectations, in the social standards that dictate you must have a certain career, a certain income, stability, or image. But what good is meeting all of those standards if at the end of the day you feel empty? I learned that purpose cannot be built upon the expectations of others. It cannot be born from fear of disappointment or from the need for approval. It must rise from the depths of the soul, from a conviction that only you can find. And to reach that place, I had to silence many voices. The voice of fear telling me it was too late. The voice of conformity whispering that life simply is what it is. The voice of judgment questioning every impulse of my heart. And above all, the voice of habit that made me live on autopilot. Silencing those voices was an act of courage, because doing so left me face to face with my own uncertainty. There were no more excuses. I could no longer claim I didn't have time. I couldn't hide behind responsibilities. I was alone with the essential question: what do I want to build with my life? That was where transformation began. I asked myself questions I had never dared to face. What moves me? What stirs my soul? What breaks me open and makes me feel alive? What would make me proud at the end of my days? And I began to notice that my purpose didn't have to appear grand in the eyes of the world. I didn't need to build an empire, change the planet, or become a public figure. My purpose could be simple, yet powerful: to live in alignment, to make my thoughts, feelings, and actions one, to be a man who honors his values even when no one is watching, to be a presence that leaves a mark not through words, but through example, through integrity, discipline, and devotion. Purpose has no single shape. For some, it's teaching. For others, healing. For others, creating. But all true purposes share one thing in common. They serve something greater than oneself. They move beyond the ego and enter the realm of the soul. And through that service, one transforms, becoming stronger, centered, and complete. No longer needing external validation because inner clarity has taken its place. No longer chasing everything because one has chosen what truly matters. No longer trying to impress because one has found meaning. I began to realize that as I drew closer to my purpose, something inside me came alive. My decisions became clearer. My fears grew quieter. My energy increased. Because when you live in alignment with your purpose, your mind stops resisting and begins to flow. You no longer wake up out of obligation. You wake up out of conviction. You no longer work only for money. You work for impact. You no longer make empty sacrifices. You make conscious offerings. And that difference changes everything. Purpose is the root of a fulfilled life. It is not a luxury, it is a necessity, because without it, one can achieve success and still feel incomplete, and that incompleteness eventually becomes unbearable. So, if you too feel that quiet unease, that silent emptiness you can't seem to fill, don't ignore it, don't normalize it, and don't call it peace. That emptiness is not the problem, it's the signal that you are being called to something greater, to look within, to reorder your life through meaning. And that doesn't require immediate answers, only a decision, the decision to start living with direction. Because purpose is not found at the end of the road, it's built step by step in the way you choose to live today. Understanding that completely changed the way I saw my days. I used to obsess over distant results, over goals that seemed to define whether my life was worth something or not. I felt pressured to achieve something great, something visible, something others could admire. That meaning is not at the end of a journey. It lives in the act of walking it. The true purpose was never about reaching a final destination. It was about the way I traveled and the consciousness I brought to each step. It didn't matter if I reached the top of a mountain. What mattered was whether every step aligned with what I truly valued. And that's when I discovered something even more powerful. Purpose is not about success. It's about coherence. The coherence between what I believe and what I do, between what I feel and what I choose, between the vision I hold for my life and the actions I take each day. When that coherence is missing, a person begins to disintegrate from within. Even when everything seems to function well on the outside, there's an internal fracture that weakens every effort. It's like trying to run with an unhealed wound. At first, you resist, but sooner or later, the pain stops you. That's why I began asking myself a question every night before sleeping. Did I live today according to the person I want to become? Not how much I achieved, not how much I earned, but was I coherent with my principles, my values, my vision of life? That question helped me redesign my days. I stopped filling my schedule with things that didn't bring me closer to what truly mattered. I began saying no to projects, people, and activities that drained my energy and pulled me away from my center. I realized I didn't need to do more. I needed to do with more intention. And that realization led me to a practice that transformed my existence, beginning each day with a clear purpose. Not a grand one, not an impossible goal, but a specific, meaningful intention. Today, I want to listen with presence. Today, I want to serve with dedication. Today, I want to act with integrity. Because when a person lives with intention, it doesn't matter if the world recognizes them or not. They know they are on the right path, and that is enough. Living with purpose is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It's daily work, a training of the soul. It's the constant choice to align yourself again and again with what you value most. And yes, there will be days when you fail, when you drift away, when you forget, when you fall. But even those days can have purpose if you use them to learn, to correct, to return. Purpose doesn't demand perfection. It demands commitment. It doesn't ask you to have it all figured out. It only asks you not to give up, to keep walking even when the meaning is not yet fully clear. Because there is something profoundly true that clarity comes through movement. Purpose becomes visible as you move forward. Don't wait to have all the answers before beginning. Start with what you know, with what you sense, with what resonates within. Move from there, and through experience, through contact with life itself, signals will begin to appear. People, moments, lessons that will help you see with greater clarity. But those signs only reveal themselves to the one who walks. The one who waits for certainty finds only confusion. Whoever acts, even with doubt, clears the path. Because purpose isn't revealed in passive contemplation, but through conscious action. And that changes everything. As my days began to find direction, something unexpected unfolded within me. My energy shifted. I no longer felt dragged through life as if each day were an obligation. I began to feel in control, and more than that, I felt at peace. Because when you act with purpose, the mind ceases its internal war. You no longer need to justify your decisions or convince yourself that you're doing the right thing. You just know. There's an alignment between what you do and who you are. And that harmony is what most people desperately seek, not realizing that what they're truly missing isn't perfection or total control, but intention. Intention brings order. Intention gives meaning. Intention transforms every moment into an opportunity to evolve. I remember how even the simplest tasks began to take on new value. It was no longer about working only to meet expectations, speaking only to respond, or moving only to survive. Every action could become an expression of mindfulness. I could respond to an email with presence. I could listen to someone with genuine attention. I could take care of my body as an act of gratitude rather than a punishment. Purpose taught me that I didn't need great achievements to feel fulfilled. I just needed to be fully present in the moments that were already mine. And there, in the everyday, a new way of living began to flourish. A life with roots, a life with strength. But I must tell you this, living with purpose isn't always easy. It's not a path free of doubt or difficulty. There will be days when those around you don't understand your decisions. There will be times when returning to the familiar, the comfortable, the superficial seems easier, because purpose challenges you. It demands more. It forces you to face your own contradictions. It calls you to rise up even when there's no applause. And that takes character. Yet, it gives you something that nothing else will: fulfillment. That deep feeling of knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing what you're meant to be doing, even if it's difficult, even if it's silent, even if it goes unnoticed. So, I want to make a clear invitation. If these words resonate with you, take a step. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to start. Start acting like the person you aspire to be. Start making decisions that reflect what you truly value. Stop living to please and start living to build, because your life deserves meaning. And no one will give it to you. You must create it yourself, with courage, with commitment, with discipline. You may wonder if you can really do it, if you have the strength, the time, the clarity. Let me tell you something. It's never about having perfect conditions. It's about deciding, saying enough. Enough with procrastinating. Enough with pretending your life is just a rough draft. Enough with living as if your story doesn't matter, because it does. You have the ability to build a solid purpose, one that sustains you even in your darkest days. You don't need anyone's confirmation. You just need to remember. You weren't created just to survive. You were created to impact, to leave a mark, and it all begins the moment you decide. Living with purpose doesn't mean everything immediately aligns or that results appear overnight. The truth is, at first, it may seem like nothing changes. Your surroundings seem the same. Your circumstances don't suddenly transform, and doubts continue to haunt you at night. But something changes from the very beginning. You, your way of perceiving life, your response to challenges, your awareness of distractions, and that inner transformation, though invisible from the outside, becomes the foundation for every great change to come. Because when you change, everything around you begins to realign. Life responds to those who are truly committed. I noticed it in the smallest details, in the way I spoke, in the types of people who began to appear, in the opportunities that had previously gone unnoticed because my mind was unfocused. It wasn't luck, or magic, or coincidence. It was the reflection of a mind aligned with a purpose, a mind that no longer scattered in 1,000 directions, but knew clearly what to say yes to and what to say no to. Because living with purpose also means learning to let go of the need for approval, to let go of the paths that aren't yours, to take off the masks you built just to fit in, to surrender everything that distances you from the essential. And even though that letting go sometimes hurts, it is the pain that frees you. Many resist this because they believe living with purpose means constant sacrifice, that it's dull, rigid, or limiting. But in truth, it is the opposite. Purpose doesn't confine you. It expands you. It gives you clarity to choose wisely, strength to endure what once defeated you, and focus to invest your time, your energy, and your heart into what truly matters. Because purpose is not an obligation. It is a gift. It is the privilege of living a life with direction. A life not measured by what you achieve, but by what you become. And at this point, I want to tell you something important. If you're searching for clarity, if something inside you longs to awaken, but you don't know where to begin, you are exactly where you need to be. You are not alone. All who have sought meaning have walked through uncertainty. We have all felt fear. We have all doubted. But we've also learned that every small step, every act of courage, builds the path ahead. That's why you're here, because a part of you has already decided to awaken. It has decided it no longer wants to live on autopilot. It has decided that you deserve more. So stay. Walk this process with me. You don't need to know how you'll do it all. You only need to say, I begin today. Because living without meaning is far too expensive. It drains your energy, your direction, your joy. But living with purpose, even when it demands effort, gives everything back tenfold. So do it. Not out of pressure, not out of guilt. Do it because you deserve a life that makes you proud, and that life is one decision away. One of the greatest obstacles to living with purpose does not lie outside you, but within. It is that inner voice that doubts, that questions, that belittles your progress. That voice that says you are not enough, that it's too late, that you've made too many mistakes. That voice is not your consciousness, even if it disguises itself as reason. That voice is the echo of your fears, your wounds, of all the moments you were judged, rejected, or misunderstood. And if you don't recognize it, if you don't confront it, it will drag you into a life beneath your potential. Because you cannot build a meaningful life upon guilt, shame, or constant self-criticism. It is built through compassion, through self-discipline, through a deep commitment to your own growth. I, too, have heard that voice. It told me it was too late to begin again, that I should keep following a path that didn't fulfill me, that stepping outside the mold would make me lose everything I had built. And for a while, I believed it. But there came a point when the pain of ignoring my inner call became greater than the fear of starting over. Because one can adapt to emptiness, but one can never be fulfilled by what lacks meaning. And that's when I understood that true transformation begins when you refuse to keep living a borrowed life, a life others designed for you, a life without soul, without fire, without direction. You don't need a perfect past to live with purpose. It doesn't matter if you've made mistakes, if you've lost time, if you've fallen more times than you can count. None of that disqualifies you. It prepares you. Because every wound, every fall, every disappointment teaches you what you truly value. And when you decide to look at your story with new eyes, with the intention to learn, instead of judge, you discover that even the most painful moments can become part of your purpose. You realize that your experiences can help others, guide your choices, and build a life that feels authentic. Living with purpose also means taking responsibility, not playing the victim, not waiting for someone to rescue you, not blaming your past, luck, or circumstances. Because the more responsibility you accept, the more power you reclaim, the power to redesign your path, the power to heal, the power to create something new. No one will do it for you. No one cares more about your life than you do. And the sooner you understand this, the sooner you'll start making choices that reflect your true worth. That's why I invite you to face that inner voice that doubts you and challenge it. For every thought that says I can't, respond with action. For every fear that paralyzes you, take a step forward. Not because you are fearless, but because you have decided that your purpose matters more. Because you've realized that your life holds a meaning still unfolding, and that meaning is not revealed through passivity, but through motion, through the will to keep going even when the path is unclear, through the conviction that you deserve to build a life that reflects the best of who you are, even if it hurts, even if no one understands it at first, because that is the life worth remembering when you reach the end of the road. And that life begins now. Once you understand that your purpose is not something that falls from the sky, but something you consciously build, every action, every decision gains new weight. You stop living by impulse and reacting by habit. You begin to choose. You begin to say, this yes and this no, with greater strength. Because you now know that everything you accept shapes the direction of your journey. You can no longer afford to live as if it doesn't matter, because it does. It matters what you see, what you hear, what you tolerate, what you do with your free time. Everything is part of your direction. Everything either brings you closer to or pulls you away from the meaningful life you are meant to build. And that kind of clarity can be uncomfortable because it forces you to let go of what is superficial. It forces you to stop blaming your surroundings and start looking inward. It asks you, am I truly living with intention or merely surviving? Am I doing what I do out of conviction or simply out of habit? Am I building something I am proud of or just maintaining a hollow image? These questions are not comfortable, but they are necessary. They are what separate those who remain asleep from those who finally decide to awaken. Because living with purpose is not an emotional state. It is a sustained choice. It does not depend on your mood, the weather, or how your day went. It depends on your commitment to yourself. And when that choice becomes a habit, your entire life begins to reflect it. You become more demanding with your environment, not out of arrogance, but because you no longer tolerate what keeps you small. You become more selective with your words because you understand that each one can build or destroy. You become more present because you realize that the only moment in which you can act with intention is this one, the present, here and now. Not when you have more time, not when you have more money, not when everything is perfect. Now, because purpose is not something you postpone, it is something you practice. You begin to notice a shift in how you relate to others. You no longer seek connections out of need or routine. You seek authenticity, relationships that nourish you, challenge you, and reflect the best within you. You walk away, without guilt, from what no longer vibrates with your new direction. Not out of pride, but out of respect, because your energy is sacred. If you are going to live with purpose, you must protect it. You must surround yourself with people who are also committed to their growth, who understand that life is not about surviving, but about creating, contributing, and rising together. And perhaps the most revealing part is that you begin to enjoy the process. Not because it's easy, not because everything works immediately, but because you know that every step, every fall, every breakthrough is aligned with something greater. You no longer need everything to be perfect. You just need it to make sense. And when each day has meaning, even the hard days carry value. Even exhaustion becomes sacred, because you know you are fighting for something that matters, for a life that will one day be worthy of being remembered. Not because it was comfortable, but because it was conscious, steadfast, and lived with purpose. Over time, I discovered something that changed the way I understood life. Living with purpose does not only transform you, it transforms everyone around you. When a person begins to live with clarity, with commitment, with authenticity, their mere presence has power. They don't need to convince, to shout, or to prove anything. Their coherence speaks for them. Their discipline inspires. The way they walk through life becomes a silent invitation for others to awaken as well. And without even trying, they become a beacon, a point of reference for those still lost in confusion, apathy, or resignation. Because a person with purpose radiates direction. I began to notice how my inner transformation was reflected in my relationships. Instead of seeking approval, I began to seek connection. Instead of pleasing, I began to build sincere bonds. Because when you live with purpose, you stop hiding. You no longer need to disguise yourself to be accepted. You show yourself as you are, with your story, your values, your boundaries. And though that may unsettle some, it strengthens many others. Because it shows that it is possible to live from truth. It is possible to be firm without arrogance, to have clarity without rigidity, to say no from self-respect, to choose peace even in the midst of noise. But I also understood that this path requires consistency, that purpose is nourished every day through concrete actions, not good intentions. It is not enough to have a vision. You must have structure, habits, routine. Purpose needs a body, a schedule, discipline. A powerful vision means nothing if your days are filled with chaos. That's why I began to design my mornings, my afternoons, my nights, not as a prison, but as a temple, a sacred space where I could move forward with clarity, where every moment was aligned with what I truly wanted to build. It wasn't easy at first, but over time, it became natural. Because when something has meaning, effort becomes a privilege. And if there is one thing I want to make clear, it's this: no one can live your purpose for you. No one can make your choices. No one can carry the weight of your meaning. That task belongs only to you. And though it may feel lonely at times, it is profoundly liberating. Because when you finally understand that you are the one who decides what your life means, everything changes. You no longer wait for the world's approval. You no longer need applause. You no longer depend on external validation to feel worthy, because now you understand that you are doing what you came here to do, and that changes everything. You are here for a reason. You are hearing this for a reason. It's not an accident, not a coincidence. It's your soul reminding you that you were not born merely to survive. You were born to live with strength, with meaning, with direction. You were born to impact, to create, to leave a trace behind. And even when the path seems uncertain, what truly matters is not seeing the entire road ahead, but taking the next step with confidence, with intention, with purpose. Because a well-lived life is never built in theory. It's built through action. And that action begins with you, here, today, in this exact moment. Reaching this point made me realize something I had ignored for so long. No matter how motivated you are, without a clear vision of where you're going, you will end up exhausted. You can work hard, be disciplined, even appear successful. But if you don't understand why you do what you do, everything becomes an empty routine. Purpose is what gives direction to effort. It's what turns exhaustion into fulfillment, routine into growth, and every sacrifice into a part of something greater. Without it, you drain yourself. You lose yourself in doing without feeling. You wander aimlessly, even if it looks like you're moving forward. So if you feel tired, frustrated, or unmotivated, ask yourself, am I lacking energy or am I lacking purpose? I've lived that truth myself. I pushed myself to the limit. I checked every box, completed every task, yet at the end of the day, I felt I was standing still. Why? Because there was no connection between what I did and what I truly wanted to do. There was no coherence, no inner goal, only external pressure. I was reacting instead of deciding. It is not enough to be productive. You must be intentional. A productive life without purpose is nothing more than an empty machine. Efficient, yes, but hollow. The key is to align what you do with who you are. And that alignment doesn't happen overnight. It takes vision, reflection, and brutal honesty. It begins when you dare to pause, to question, to redesign your path. Sometimes, living with purpose requires the courage to destroy what you once built, to say, this no longer represents me, even if it cost you years to build it. Because what truly matters is not how much you've invested in something, but whether it still leads you where you want to go. Many people stay trapped in relationships, jobs, habits, or cities simply because they've already invested time. But purpose does not look back, it looks forward. And if what you have today no longer aligns with the person you are becoming, then it's not a loss, it's liberation. Your purpose isn't found in what you accumulate, but in what transforms you, elevates you, makes you feel alive. And I learned that living with purpose doesn't mean having all the answers from the beginning. You can have doubts, fears, or even stumble blindly, and still be on the right path. What matters is not perfection, it's direction. If you know where you're going, every step, even the clumsy ones, brings you closer. But if you have no direction, even your strongest steps lead you astray. So before moving forward, stop. Look at your life with sincere eyes. Ask yourself, does what I'm doing bring me closer to my vision or further away from it? Does this environment empower me or does it drain me? Am I building from the soul or just from habit? And if the answer hurts, don't run from it. Don't hide it. Don't deny it. Use it. Use that pain as fuel to change, to clear your path, to begin choosing differently. Because living with purpose is not something that happens to you. It's something you choose, day after day, decision after decision. It's not easy, but it's possible. And when you truly do it, when you finally live with meaning, there's no turning back, because now you've tasted what it means to live with depth. And after that, nothing less will satisfy you. When you live from purpose, you discover a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. You no longer need things to go as planned to feel complete. You are no longer at the mercy of judgment or external recognition, because your worth no longer depends on what you achieve, but on what you embody, on what you continue to uphold even when no one sees, on the principles you choose when it would be easier to betray them. Purpose becomes your spine. It holds you when everything shakes, it guides you when everything fades, and it reminds you that meaning is not found in the world. It is created within the soul that dares to live consciously. When everything is confusing, it reminds you who you are when the world tries to make you forget. And within that silent firmness, within that deep conviction, true power is born. Not the power to dominate others, but the power to never betray yourself. That kind of life is not for everyone. It requires courage, maturity, and the willingness to be misunderstood. Because true purpose often challenges what is established. It pushes you to step outside what is considered normal. It leads you to say no to what most people accept without question. It demands that you live by a higher standard, not because you believe you are better, but because you can no longer tolerate living unconsciously, because you know what is at stake, because you understand that your life is unique, unrepeatable, and there is no time to waste. Each day without purpose is a silent betrayal of the person you could become. And you know it, you feel it, you sense it. That is why you are here, why you have reached this point. You don't need anyone else to understand it. You don't need to justify yourself. What you need is to decide, with firmness, humility, and determination. Decide that you will no longer live by chance, that you will not act out of impulse, that you will not allow the noise of the world to drown out the voice of your soul. Because that voice is sacred, that voice knows your path, and when you follow it, even without knowing exactly where it leads, you begin to feel whole again. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are whole. You are at peace, present, and building. And in that state, purpose ceases to be a goal. It becomes your way of being in the world, your way of speaking, working, loving, and serving. You no longer ask what the meaning of life is, because you are the one giving it meaning with every act, every word, every choice. You become the answer itself, the example, the living proof that it is possible to live with intention, that it is possible to be firm without being rigid, to have direction without losing sensitivity. And that, in the end, is what remains. Not the titles, not the trophies, not the appearances. What remains is the mark you left behind, the impact you created, the story you wrote through your decisions. So now it's clear. You decide. No one else. You decide whether your life will be a reflection of fear or an expression of purpose. You decide whether your story will be a repetition of what you already know or a conscious creation of something new. You decide whether you will live dimmed, waiting for something external to awaken you, or if you will ignite your fire from within, once and for all. And if you choose the latter, there is no turning back, because a person who begins to live with purpose, even when he falls, always rises again. Even when he doubts, he always returns to his center. Even when he suffers, he never forgets why he is here. And that is what makes him unstoppable.